The part of this session is going to be flying by the seat of my pants, doing live code on the internet, which Craig did very well last time we were here. So feels like that's the done thing. But I'm also going to try and make this relevant for if you're not a techie, if you're not into the geeky stuff. I'm hoping that everybody will understand what I'm talking about and be clear. Even if you don't understand the individual lines of code, you'll understand the principles behind it, and you'll understand the capabilities and power that we're talking about. I'm also up for a debate. So if you think actually our situation locally at this council is different, we've solved that problem in another way, then let's have that conversation, because I'm by no means saying I've got everything right here. But I wanted to start off with a thanks to Dave, because I love these sessions. I always felt when I was at Nottinghamshire, it was my first assumption when we came across a problem was someone else is bound to have had this problem before us. And if only I could find that person and put two and two together, I could solve this without having to really think about it very much. I could learn from other people, establish best practice, or even look at it and go, well, that's actually probably not relevant to us because it's a different type of authority or a different type of tech stack. But exposing yourself to what other people in the sector are doing can never be a bad thing. And I found this picture of Dave, and this is a picture of Dave explaining how far apart the two Ibis hotels are in Glasgow. They're that far apart, that far apart. I took Dave on a wild goose chase around Glasgow. I took him to the Ibis. A problem was I took him to the wrong Ibis, and he's not forgiven me yet. So, but thank you very much, Dave. Very much appreciated. So, I just click OK. There we go. Little bit about me. I was at 16 years at Nottinghamshire County Council, running a team that did exactly this sort of stuff. So we built online forms with the clever technology behind them. We built apps, we built websites, we built all this sort of stuff. In 2021, I left and started Tailwind Digital. We work exclusively with local government, working on digital innovation, agile and data stuff. And there are some of the customers, which are hopefully some of them are on the call, and they're all recognizable faces. So let's have a look at the problem we're actually trying to solve here today. And you can nod on. And is there a way of doing sort of yes, I agree sort of symbols on Zoom, Dave? How do we do that?
I think people can do thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Okay,
there's a react button.
There's a react. Good. Okay, so if you feel like, yeah, that's us, that's what we'd like to get to, then yeah, drop some thumbs up so we can make sure this is a bit interactive, because otherwise I'm just looking at names. So we have got LocalGov website Nirvana, the place we'd all like to get to with our website, and it looks a little bit like this. Firstly, we have a single public-facing website. And in that single public-facing website, we've got consistent corporate branding everywhere. We've got all the functionality that we need is available. And we've also got all these other sort of hygiene things, you know, search engine optimization, accessibility. It's got to be fairly cheap, and it's got to be fairly performant, because councils don't have a lot of money. The other thing is, it's got to be simple to maintain. Now, as the person that was in charge of the team responsible for maintaining all of this stuff, that was also a concern, which I don't think was necessarily felt by everyone, but it was definitely felt by me. So we've got to make sure we've got ticks in all these boxes. Now, let's talk about LocalGov website reality. So firstly, there was the CMS. And we saw the CMS and we saw that it was good. So we decided to put our public website there. And on that public website, we published a whole bunch of static pages. And it was good because the public website was doing what it was meant to do, produce high performance static web pages very cheap. And then someone came along and said, oh, we've got a crazy project, we need a microsite. So we built a microsite for that, and then decided we needed to do some devolution, and that needed a microsite as well. And then the bypass needed a microsite. And then some third party came along and said, we're going to commission an agency to do a website. So they did a website as well. They probably built it in WordPress. This talk is not going to solve any of those problems for you. Your microsite strategy is your business, so we're going to ignore that. Let's just get back to our happy place where we were there before. And if we're in this spot, we're actually in a pretty good case. We've got consistent corporate branding everywhere. everything's simple to maintain, and we've got all the SEO, accessibility, low cost, and performance as well. You know, if you've got a simple WordPress website, it can smash through all the demand from a local government type website with no real issues for very, very cheap. Anyone got a WordPress website running for the council, or some other very, very simple? Someone's not laughing at that. No, there's a big hole in here, and this is where all the problems come, which is functionality. If we want to have functionality on a website, we can't necessarily build them into static pages. So suddenly our website has got a different challenge because it needs to do stuff, it needs to interact. So let's go back to where we were. The first way that most of us choose to do this is adding a forms system. Good to see some friendly faces from our forms partners. So when I'm talking about forms, I'll show a slide in a minute with all the types of forms packages we're talking about here. But you're going to build some forms, and chances are you're going to link from your static pages to your forms. And hopefully the form system is branded similar to the website, and the customers don't really notice that it's two different systems, and they can continue. But then we've probably got functionality in our back office systems, like our planning system, our education system, our waste system, and our calendars. You know, we want to make appointments and bookings and that sort of thing. A lot of these will try and sell you a portal, and that's their solution to it. That'll probably have its own username and login. And if we have to, we'll have to put a link in from one of our static pages to this portal. It probably is not quite as brandable as it was before, and we're edging away from our nirvana. Anyone recognize this sort of situation? We've got thumbs up. Yes. We're not particularly like that, but that's where we are. Now, some of them, the good ones at least, also offer an API. This is a way that we can interactively deal with this, with these platforms and get data out of this. So the temptation, and this is a temptation I know all too well because it's exactly how we tackled this problem at Nottinghamshire, is we started building into our CMS some dynamic pages that pointed to all of these APIs and started pulling data into the CMS, making elaborate pages, but also creating some headaches along the way. Another approach which we had, which I think worked very well, was we built what I refer to as micro apps. These were basically self-contained ASP.NET apps. They sat on the council's domain, but they had some sort of strange subdomain. And I can show you examples of some of these as well. That would probably point to an API. So you get some of the functionality, but already our nirvana is looking far, far away, and we're in a bit of a mess. Our form's probably going to point to some APIs as well. So when I'm talking about forms packages, these are the sorts of things I'm talking about. Can you put a thumbs up if your forms package is on this screen? I'm hopeful that everyone can thumbs that up. Yeah, good. Okay, so let's dive into some examples of some of the things that I mean. This is where we try and flick across to the right browser in the right place, and I can show you what I mean. Starting off over here. So going back to Rushcliffe's homepage. So I've used some local websites here, not trying to show any preference. This is my local authority. So if you want to find out anything about planning, then we've got this situation where the planning portal has got a totally separate site. We've jumped across there. It's on a different URL. It looks quite different. It's got the same logo. And as a customer, we're like, okay, fair enough. It's not one website. It's not one place, but it's fine. It will work for us. Does anyone know how to move this big black bar from the top of my screen? Is there a way of pinning it out of the way? Or I'm going to have to remember how to do tabbing across. Is it Shift tab or Control tab? There we go. Right. This is another example. This is one of those static web pages on Nottinghamshire County Council's website. And they've got this static web page. You can tell it's static because it refreshes really fast, and that's all good, coming from their Umbraco site. When you go to the school place, you're into another website. not calling out Nottinghamshire for anything like this, because I know that there's lots of places where you've got suddenly the branding's gone, it looks green, maybe there's a logo, but actually as a customer, this is not quite where we'd like to be. Let's move on to the next one. So this is Newark and Sherwood's bulky waste system. Again, we're on a static page, but now we're going to jump across to some sort of interactivity. And instead of going to a portal, we're going to a form system. This is their Meritech system, where we're now into an interaction. It looks a little bit different, but similar enough. So we've got lots of these different ways of providing interactivity to our users using different ways. I'll see if I can get rid of this bar at some point. How do I hide that? Because I can't get to my tabs unless I move it down a bit. Hang on. There we go.
You can try dragging it from the top
Yes.
to the bottom of the screen. It sometimes works for me.
Okay. So Tewkesbury are here. Again, they've got a static page. And when you go to their online thing, you nip across, I think this is their netcall platform, and you can now do this, but not necessarily going exactly to the right place, because we are not gone to a bulky waste collection. We've gone to somewhere else. So there's all sorts of challenges when we're doing this sort of functionality. This is the solution that we had in Nottinghamshire for election results. So this is the micro app. Notice it's a different subdomain. Looks and feels like, because it's an app we built to match our design, it looks very much the same. And you can browse around and see all the different results from Nottinghamshire's election. This is 2021, not last week, just in case anyone was wondering. We've got some nice functionality there, and we're not hindered or constrained by any of the things that we need to do inside the website. We can build this site, but it's totally separate. Now that's fine from a maintenance and complexity point of view, but we're missing things like the search box is not here. The navigation is completely separate. It looks the same, but it's not the same. Right. So I shall now nip back to PowerPoint. So our CMS main site with all its static pages, this is a good place to be, because it's very highly cached, very efficient, it's cheap, and it's responsive. But it's these dynamic pages which create all of the challenges, because they can't be cached. They require a database or an API. They're potentially quite slow. And because of that, your whole CMS suddenly needs a bigger, more expensive server. You also need to start managing code and releases and restarts. Whereas potentially, if you're not doing anything clever inside your CMS, you can use a commodity CMS off the webs that someone else hosts for you, completely standard. But as soon as you want to start customizing it, you want to start throwing complexity in here, this is where we need to, this is where the difficulties start to come in. Now, we had this challenge, particularly with these dynamic pages, because when we were releasing new functionality into the dynamic pages, as if anyone's developed any software, regular releases are a good thing, but it would actually slow down the whole website and potentially bring down all of these microsites, which I thought we'd forgotten about, but actually we can't forget about them, because chances are they run on the same CMS that everything else runs on. So let's think about this problem slightly differently. We've got our static web page, and actually most of it, as we've seen from the Nottinghamshire example, most of it is the same as the public website. You've got a logo, you've got some links, you've got some search, you've got a heading, you've got some content, and then it's this bit in the middle which is challenging, the interactive functionality, but chances are you've got some content and links and a footer at the bottom. So if we think about it like this, actually, the majority of these pages, these interactive pages, are still mostly static. And it's just the bit in the middle that we want to animate. And if we can do that using our own app with some JavaScript and an API, then we can inject interactivity into a static web page. So we get the best of both worlds. We get high performant CMS that could be commodity and therefore quite cheap, but we also get interactivity on our web pages using a single point solution. So the way this works, and I'll show this in a second, the page loads up, static page, it grabs the JavaScript gets returned. The JavaScript says, oh, I need some data. So it goes and fetches the data from an API and then returns it. So let's have a look at an example of that happening. And I'm going to go back to the school search. This is the school search at Nottinghamshire. And in order to do this, I need to clear something. So I'm just going to go to my local storage. There's nothing in local storage. Oh, yes, there is. I'm going to get in there and just clear all that out. Okay, so then when we reload this, what I'm looking for, so when I reload this, so this is the school search at Nottinghamshire. Looks like a regular page, but it's got all of this functionality. Now, when we hit refresh, what you should see, did it? No, it didn't, because we're doing a live demo, so things always go wrong in a live demo. Let's try that again. Oh, it definitely pulled it in, didn't it? Because it's all in there now. Did I miss it? Not getting the data. Anyway, in order to make this page work, the page is going to grab this data, which conveniently I've got. Now, this is Nottinghamshire's live API, which you can hit refresh. This is pulling directly from their database of schools and pushing out all of the information about schools, including, you know, telephone numbers, names, and all that sort of stuff. So we've got all of that hanging around in there. So when this page here can just be a JavaScript widget, basically, which is from this point here. This is just content, static content as normal. But now we've got interactivity in our page. And if I click on one of these pages, we get a map and we get a whole bunch of information about the availability of places at that school. So this is, you know, really quite elaborate interactive data about a particular school. We can go back to the search and we can do catchment areas. And again, we've got really quite fancy information about which areas are in which catchments and all that sort of stuff. So we're injecting all of that data into the web page in real time. Now, this is where we get a bit nifty. So locally, I've built a little app that produces this list. So what I'm doing, if I go back to my network, if I refresh this page, it shows this list of schools. That's what we're pulling in. Let me just make sure I'm showing everything. So I'm grabbing some JavaScript, I'm grabbing some CSS, I've got a base page, and on my base page, I've got this one thing. Is that too small for everyone? I've just got a funny feeling that's way too small. Let's make it a bit bigger. I've got a base page, and inside the base page, I've got an app, and then my JavaScript, this JavaScript file is basically filling that app with a list of schools, and that all works very well. Now, what I really want to do is to be able to make changes to this app and push it up. Let's see if I can find the page I was doing this on. So over here, I have that same content now, but this has been pushed into Tailwind Digital's website. And if you look very carefully at the approach I've followed here, so that's looking at the, let's have a look at the source. In the middle of the page, if I can find it, is where we have to find the URL.
Control F, Control F.
Control F. Thank you very much. Found them all. Not that one. Not that one. There it is. Next one. Last one. There we go. So we've got this little div down here, which I've injected, and I've also got the two JavaScript files, the JavaScript and a style sheet that are loading in there. And those two files, let me make that bigger for everyone again. By just putting this tiny bit of code on the page, I can now affect the page by putting extra functionality onto it. And in this particular case, I've got a list of schools. Now, the list of schools isn't very interesting. So what we're going to do now is make a few changes for it. But before I do that, I will skip back one more time over to my slides and explain kind of how this all works. So we've got our interactivity, and we've got an app that we've deployed with JavaScript and an API. And they talk to each other, and that injects the functionality into the page. So let's imagine that we've got, across our website, we've got several pages like this, and they all want to have that little bit of functionality. They all want to have that little bit of engagement. Maybe there's a list of schools like we've shown, or you know, a little search that finds out where you are, which is your district, or something like that. Each of those can have their own app with the JavaScript and API. So when we're talking about ease of maintenance, this is a much easier approach. Is every single bit of functionality has got a small, discrete, controlled app that just controls that bit of functionality. Now, some of those might have JavaScript, but no API, because the API is already written. It's elsewhere. All we're doing is pulling the data in from another API, and it just exists elsewhere. The benefit you get of doing it like this is that each of these separate discrete bits of functionality can have its own DevOps pipeline. So we've got somewhere we can write code, somewhere we can version control code, we can then get it built and get it released. Now, I should point out before you go any further that I've mentioned JavaScript a lot. And JavaScript got a bad name. Who would be frightened a little bit of using this much JavaScript on their web page currently? Don't be shy. Yes, there's a few. Yeah, and I get it. JavaScript definitely has this kind of bad reputation, but I think that reputation is out of date largely. You can still build bad things in JavaScript. Don't get me wrong, and lots of people do. But just because it's been built in JavaScript doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. So the reasons that JavaScript got a bad reputation was largely because if your entire site was built out of JavaScript, your search engine optimization didn't work very well. The search robots couldn't find it. It also struggled with performance, though I would argue that actually most of the performance issues are not caused by the functional JavaScript. They're caused by all the trackers and other bits that go on behind the scenes, and they cause accessibility issues as well, which can be a real pain, and that's a reason why a lot of people wouldn't use it. But these days, there's entire sites that are built out of JavaScript, and they are accessible. There's entire sites built out of JavaScript, and they got great search engine optimization. So all of these things, if you deal with it right, and you deal it with modern development techniques, you can absolutely use JavaScript on your public website and still be as accessible, performant, and SEO as you need to be. So let's jump back over to our code. Now, live coding. Let's pop this over here. And let me explain what's going on here. I can make it nice and big. So the entire app that you're going to see now is on this one page. So I'll walk you through it. First of all, we've got a list of schools up here. And when we open up the page, or when this page first gets loaded, we call this function, which says get the schools. And the get the schools is basically going to this URL and grabbing all of the schools data. And just to prove that's what it's doing, let's go to that URL and grab all that schools data. So that's what it's grabbing. We can see that all the data that's coming in there. Right, so all good so far. It's then just returning that data into that collection of schools. So that collection of schools starts as empty and then it gets full. Now down here, we've got our display code. This has got a method for showing something while we're waiting for that data to be fetched. So while it's waiting for it to be fetched, it'll show loading. And then if there are schools and the school number of schools is greater than 0, then it'll do this each loop. And this each loop is basically creating a little card. I'll tell you what, I'll call it card gray because I want to make it slightly different. And we'll call this, let's change it from aqua to gray. And that should, when we save it, that should update our local version of the site, which is here. So we've now got some different functionality. I've also made a few changes here. So I've got the school base name in an H4. I've got the head teacher and the phone number. And I could add all sorts of other sort of fancy stuff here. But just for our purposes, we've got just some basic details. And immediately our web page has improved and we've now got a bit more data, whereas the one that's currently live is just this centralized list. So let's just make one more change just to demonstrate that the development experience here is really nice. Let's make it a bit more, we'll tell you what, we'll use Tailwind Blue as our background color. So something a little bit like that. And we'll save that. And immediately over in our browser, we've got a different blue color. Maybe that's a little bit too dark. So we'll go a little bit lighter. That's probably better. Save that. And our page is now ready to go to production. Now, I wanted to demonstrate as part of this the benefits of doing it as a separate app. So I'm going to go through the full release and build process. So first of all, I've got to do version control. So I've made a change to this file. So I'm going to push it up and say changed layout and color. That's the change I've made. So I'm going to commit that and publish that branch. And that goes up into my version control system. If I go over to my version control system, which is up in the cloud, I'm using Azure DevOps. Anyone using Azure DevOps? Let's have some thumbs if you're using Azure DevOps anywhere in your Dale. Nice one, Dale. Right, so here I've got my version control system, and I've just pushed this new version called New Design, and I'm going to create a pull request. And this is a very, very light pull request because it's only me changing it. But I can see all the changes that I've made in that one file since I first pushed it. And so I've got a chance as a developer or as a team of developers to validate the code changes that we've made. And I can do this very quickly. So I've done that. And I've completed it, and that code has merged. So we've done the full DevOps lifecycle. We've written it, we've done version control, we've pushed this new branch in, we've validated it, and now what will happen is that our pipeline is going to kick in. It's going to start building this code out. So just go back to PowerPoint. While that takes a couple of minutes to build, I just wanted to kind of reiterate this. The DevOps pipeline that we've got here means that this process of setting this up and publishing it out and making changes to it is now really, really fast. We can develop that code, we can push it up, and it will automatically do the build and the release. And the web page that's already sucking those JavaScript files in will now get updated without me touching the CMS at all. So I've not touched the CMS, I've not restarted anything, but I get fresh functionality inside the web page for free. Back over in DevOps land, this is now doing its merge. So that's completed. And now it's going to go on to do a release, which should start automatically in just a second. Yeah, it started up here. So that's queuing while we wait. Tell you what, I'm not going to wait. Oh, hang on, it's kicked in, so we can now see what it's doing here. All it's doing is pushing a couple of files out to a server. But the reason why we automate it is so it's repeatable and safe and secure and all that sort of good stuff. So it downloads that artifact and pushes it up. Is there a way of doing a round of applause, Dave, if this works first time?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I think it's on the reactions.
We can have some good reactions. Good to see you, Zach. So that's just going to push it all up. Come on. Right, that's done it. So this is the test. We go back to our web page that we were looking at previously, this one. So this is our public website, let's say, and it's got our current functionality on. We've now pushed some fresh JavaScript up, and it should now pull in that fresh JavaScript. And the page is just restarting, so it'll go and grab that new JavaScript. And now we've got the new look, new functionality pushed with the full DevOps pipeline in the time that it took us to talk through it. Yay, well done. Right, let's go on to some actual stuff. So this is some stuff that I've been doing with Mid-Ulster, where I've been using exactly that technique to build some functionality. So this is the system that we built for registering births. So the previous system for registering births, all the information was on a website. You needed to go and get the online form either by phoning in and asking for it, or you could go to NI Direct, or it would be mailed out to you. You then have to fill in that form. You then have to send in the form, and then you'd have to arrange the appointment, and we'd ring them to arrange that appointment. We didn't want to do this anymore because it was lots of problems. There were different channels. Everyone had to read all the instructions, even though it wasn't relevant. Lots of staff time to answer questions. The whole thing could take days end to end. Lots and lots of pay-per use, lots of missed phone calls, and changing appointments was really hard. Really where we wanted to get to was this lightweight, mobile friendly. This is what I imagine motherhood is like, isn't it? Just strolling in a leafy park on a sunny day with your phone out. And while the baby sleeps, you can fill in your registration, and all of that data comes through to the calendar, and all of the information that you've submitted via the form also comes through in a nicely neat formatted email, which is the most important thing. So let's have a look at that in action. So this is using the same approach. Oh, I've got two Mid-Ulster pages to show you. Let's duplicate this one. And resident registration services, register a birth. Now, see if you can spot the functionality dropping in. If I refresh the page quickly, you might just see it popping in. There it is. So this here, this is that widget that's popping into the website. So the Mid-Ulster staff don't have to worry about this. They're using their content management system the same as normal with those 3 lines. So there's the div and the JavaScript and the style sheet. They add those into this page, and all of a sudden this page gets this extra functionality. So in this particular case, we're asking, where do you live? Shout out to Swift Complete. The search that I'm showing you here is using Swift Complete. If you haven't come across Swift Complete before, I highly suggest you look at it. It is the best type ahead address search, and it's perfect for local government. The feature that makes it perfect for local government is it's got geographically biased search. So I'm going to search for High Street. There's hundreds of high streets all over the UK. But the high street that it's recommended to me is the one that's closest to Mid-Ulster. Now, I live on a street called Medway. There's Medways, drives, roads, streets everywhere, all across the UK. And if I type my address in, it's actually quite hard because I have to type most of the address before I get it to actually recognize. With geographically biased search, which is particularly relevant for local gov because we're mostly interested in addresses in our area, then this is a killer feature. So I'm going to choose the address that I want. In this case, it's the legal services in Moneymore. And then we're doing another API lookup and showing us the places that we can go and register the birth. I'll make this a bit bigger for everyone. And we're also showing, because we can use an API, we're doing a Bing Maps based road search that shows us from this location how far it is to our 3 different offices, and giving them some driving times as well. So they've got the choice of any of these 3 offices, but they've got the information they need to make that choice. So they can click on the registry office they want to visit. Again, we're doing another lookup, another API lookup, and this time we're showing a calendar that will tell us where they've got availability, and the color indicates availability. And now we can see where everything is. Now, there's all the sort of keyboard-based functionality that you'd expect here, because we're fully accessible. So I'm just using my keyboard to navigate, and that works great. I can go back and have a look at the 13th. Also, if we are on a mobile device, let's just go mobile for a second. This was designed mobile first, so you get a really great experience on mobile. And that's good. So we can see where the availability is, and we now know we can get an appointment. At this point, we're shooting across into another technology. Shout out to Typeform. Typeform is not a replacement for all of the forms packages we showed earlier, but it is a really good forms package. And I do hope that some of the functionality that Typeform have got starts to seep its way into the forms packages that we are using day to day. What it is good at is simple, straightforward forms that you can step through gradually. You can't pull any data from other systems into Typeform, which is why I say it's not a straight replacement. But for our purposes here, it was dead good. And what it allows you to do is it's 1 question per page. So as you go through the questions, we can infer what happens next from what happens on this question. So if I click those 2 children, they're twins, it's were the children born in Northern Ireland. If there was only 1, it was the child born in Northern Ireland. I can go through this process all the way through. I'm not going to go through all of that, because it's a very, very long form, but we've had a massive success with it. So we wanted to deliver that, and we wanted to get everything into here. Now the website shows location and it shows availability. The form is online. You only see the information that's relevant to you. You only see the rules that you need to see. And the appointment is at the end of that. We're using Calendly to make the appointment directly into people's Outlook calendars, and you get an SMS and all that sort of stuff as well. You can rearrange the appointment easily. So we've now got all the channels are available, but actually 99% of people are doing it digitally. They only get the instructions they need, very little staff time. The process can be done end to end in less than 15 minutes. We've got no paper, much fewer phone calls, and changing appointments is much easier. And we've actually linked in with the NHS, and the NHS in the Mid-Ulster area are now handing out leaflets to new mothers when they go and see them with a QR code. And that QR code drives people directly to that form I've just shown you, where they can go and register their birth. So it's really helping accelerate that. In the first 6 months after we went live, we've been live for a year now, but these are the stats after 6 months, nearly 1,000 responses. So we've got about 2,000 births registered every year, 99.7% of them online, 90% on a mobile device. And we largely think that's due to the QR code. The QR code that the NHS are handing out, you start on a mobile device. Why would you leave if you're having a good experience? 37% of those done out of hours. So we're providing a service that we just weren't providing before. Sadly for the dads, 77% of these have been done by the mother, but half of them have been done in less than 10 minutes. Considering this is a form with over 40 questions, and some cases more than that, getting it done in that time is good. And 80% of them are done in 15 minutes, so that's a great story as well. We were really pleased. This is Melissa on reception. We're really pleased with the impact we had outside of the registrars, because previously reception were taking all of the phone calls that registrars couldn't answer. And they actually said we weren't sure if the phones were working correctly because we just weren't getting any calls about registering births anymore. by providing a really good digital solution, we'd completely shifted all of that demand over. And this was a nice article that we had published in Agenda NI, which is the publication for digital. Joe McGuckin here saying, based on our figures from 2023, we have reduced calls into and out of the team by 32%. That's over 5,000 fewer calls annually and 40% fewer emails, nearly 2,500 fewer annually. So providing that rich user interface and that content on the website, rather than forcing people to go anywhere else, we really shortcut that experience for everyone. And now I'm running a little bit light on time, so I'm going to skip across to the next thing, which is bins. So bins in Northern Ireland. Here are the bin driving across for Mid-Ulster. I know everyone's got bins, and Mid-Ulster had never really looked at the missed bins experience before. We did an awful lot of different work. They've got 34 trucks out every day, massive rural area, 170 routes and 165,000 bins every fortnight. And they wanted to do this work not because they were a bad service. They wanted to do this work because they're already a good service and they wanted to be the best. They also recognized they were getting lots and lots of phone calls about missed bins, and that the number of bins missed is not necessarily the same as the number of phone calls they're getting about bins. So the goal here was slightly different in that we didn't really have a form to fill in, but we just wanted to make sure that people had got the information they needed. Now, this, again, I'm going to show you where we got all of the ideas for this from. This is Harrow. Ben at Harrow. I don't know if Ben's on the call. Might be. Sort of folk might pop into these sorts of things. This is the website they've got at Harrow. And if you want to report a missed bin here, you put in your postcode, poor HA2 0DQ, and it shows you the properties. And then you get this rich experience, which they're looking up from their data. And this is very similar to the approach I've shown you. Static web page with functionality injected into it. And you can now see, I can see the different bins that I've got available. And because the collection is today, I can't report that missed bin today because the business rules have been built into the content. So this is data-informed, rich content that we're showing to the user. So we built the same thing for Mid-Ulster. If I search for, I can remember a postcode. And we're using the web aspects system. I've chosen a postcode that doesn't exist. There we go. Is anyone else using web aspects? Trust me for trying to guess an address. Web aspects users for their waste system? Nobody? So web aspects provides actually a really rich API, but it's all written in XML and it's pretty rough. So we wrote a layer across the top of that to make it a nice JSON based. Oh dear me, this is not going well, is it? Oh no, number 56 has a bin. Oh goodness. I'm going to call on my good friend Emma Louise. Can you give us a postcode that's actually going to work for me, please?
BT88FN.
Freddie November.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got all of that coming through there, and we can now say this was yesterday, so I can report this bin as missed because the business rules that are built into the system say that can work. Like we had before, this works great on a mobile. So if you're on a mobile phone, it was designed mobile first, and we can go to last week's bins, next week's bins, and see what's coming up, and this week's bins. And there we go. So same approach there. We're pulling data out of an API. The API itself is over here. So if I put in a postcode to this BT80 what did you say, 8FN? Then I get back a list of addresses down here with all their UPRNs. I can then pass one of those UPRNs into this other API call, which is at the bottom. This bit's a bit fast, but we'll struggle on. And that will then pull back the results for which bins are being collected. So last week is a black bin. This week is a brown and blue bin. And next week is a black bin, and they're on Monday, and all the dates are there. So the API is giving us the data. The JavaScript is giving us this nice user interface, and we're injecting it all into the website. So it works mobile, responsive, SEO, and accessible for the win. That's, I think, Dave, is me. Oh, that's
Awesome.
me. If you do want to connect or contrast, and we've got 5 minutes. I mean, I've got a little bit longer if anyone wants to stick around longer to sort of take questions, ask questions, and sort of debate. But yeah, if anyone wants to connect on LinkedIn, I talk about this stuff a lot, and I love making connections in local gov.
I'm sure you do, Tom. I'm sure you do. So yeah, no, thank you for that. That's really, really interesting. And it's great seeing it actually under the hood in terms of how it all works. So massive thanks for that. Also, I thought question I've got, Tom, is that this as an approach, when you showed us earlier, you know, all those logos of all those wonderful sort of low-codey type forms packages and stuff like that. The advantage of those things, of course, is that you don't have to have the people with the skills to who are able to like jimmy up some JavaScript to do that kind of thing. So is this an approach that works particularly for councils with a certain set of in-house skills, or you know what's the thing there?
Yeah, I would say 100% it is. I'm using a technology called Svelte, and I think if you've got anybody that's got even an inkling of skills with code, HTML, and JavaScript, then Svelte is a really low learning curve and actually very accessible. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's going to be for someone that, you know, their only coding experience is Excel. But if you've got someone that's, especially if you've got a specific challenge that you want to solve, then this is a great tool, and it's not as steep that as you need it to. And also the DevOps stuff, the DevOps pipeline, I set that up in about an hour and a half last night. None of that stuff is particularly complicated either. It's just making sure that when I push a change, it arrives reliably onto the website. So this is what I'm hoping to show is that these what people might have heard about, you know, DevOps pipelines and JavaScript apps. These might be, well, that's code that another sector uses. It's not stuff that we do in the public sector. I don't think that's necessarily true. We can offer our users this type of functionality. We don't have to draw an artificial barrier because we haven't quite got our heads around how to do it, because we have been doing it, and we have been doing it for some time. And hopefully a session like this kind of helps people understand, yeah, it is accessible, and yeah, it's not super straightforward, but it's not as tough as people might have assumed it is.
Yeah, the other case, I think definitely, even if perhaps councils don't use this as their main element of their digital service approach, is that with all those platforms we were talking about earlier, there are always going to be some edge cases which just don't work well in those particular technologies. So it's nice to have something like this that perhaps is a way that, you know, for that very small number of things that perhaps are a little bit sort of bespoke, a little bit sort of unique, that actually there is a way of you know, sort of custom coding stuff that's not necessarily like as vast an endeavor as it might otherwise have been.
Yes.
Brilliant. We've got about a minute left or so. Has anybody got any other questions that they would like to fire at Tom about this? He was quite comprehensive in his presentation.
So how do you get the app? Hi, Tom.
Yeah, hi, Zach.
How do you get the app integrated into the index page? Is the app code loaded down somewhere else, or did I miss that?
So yeah, it did dance across your screen very quickly, Zach. So I can show that. if I share my screen again, on the page where you want to embed the functionality, you just need to add 3 lines to your code.
Div app div.
So these are the 3 lines I've added to my code. So one is the app, which is the place I'm going to insert all my functionality is going to go in there, and then I've got the JavaScript and the style sheet, and they go there. So that's all you need. You can drop that onto anywhere, and that's exactly how all of those Mid-Ulster examples and the Nottinghamshire examples, they all work with 3 files or three lines of code. Once you've got those 3 lines of code on there, everything else can be controlled through your DevOps pipeline.
Okay, so if you've got more than one Svelte app on one page, can you give it different IDs?
Yeah. You can have an app that just does the links, or an app that just does your search in your top corner. You could have an app that just does some sidebar widget. You can have little apps that do everything and pull, and a lot of websites do work like that. They individual microservices addressing niche concerns, and they don't have to be complex. They can get simple.
Then.
Sorry?
I can forget a lot of JavaScript and just reuse the same components.
Potentially, yes. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thanks, Zach, and thanks, Tom. Yeah, Simon's just we'll wrap things up in a moment, but Gray's just put a note in the chat about a lot of this will depend on the CMS allowing people to embed JavaScript into pages and things like that. So there may be some technical limitations. Have you come across any of those before, Tom, with this approach?
Not yet. So yeah. We didn't. Nottinghamshire we're using Umbraco, Mid-Ulster using Kentico. I think pretty much everywhere you can embed some small amount of HTML, and if you can embed a small amount of HTML, you can embed the lines that we need, and everything else after that happens from that basis.
Great stuff. Brilliant. Okay, thank you so much, Tom, for giving up your time. That was brilliant, and for taking the risk of the live demos and stuff. It didn't go too tragically wrong, did it? So I think we can count that as a total win. Thanks to everybody for turning up. We'll be doing another one of these in about a month's time. So it's the first Tuesday of every month. What are we doing next time? I probably should have looked this up earlier, shouldn't I? And next time, what we are going to be doing is we are going to be hearing about, that's it, Chris Thompson and the gang at Northumberland are going to talk to us about their supplier engagement stuff that they've been doing. So that's quite interesting, actually. They've been trying to do a much more collaborative approach with their sort of supplier community. So that should be fun. Come along to that. Find out more about LocalGovDigital at LocalGovDigital. And I think that's probably everything. So thanks to everybody for coming along. Thanks again to Tom. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.